Welcome to the Dom.Hockey Podcast, proudly presented by Bench Rates. Created by a former hockey player, Bench Rates uses a proprietary algorithm to assign a true monetary value to a player's on-ice contributions and lets you compare that value directly to his cap hit. Bench Rates evaluates professional players across leagues worldwide, including the NHL and AHL. Learn more at benchrates.com. Also brought to you by McKeen's Hockey. McKeen's produces the premier NHL draft guide featuring more than 200 player reports and comprehensive rankings. They also deliver in-depth prospect coverage through their annual team-by-team rankings and their trusted hockey pool yearbook. Visit mckeens.com and subscribe for just $16.50 Canadian for 3 months. I don't know what just happened there, but let me see what we got going on here. Dom, welcome back. I think I bumped something and that stopped the video. Sorry about that.
Oh, that's okay. It happens.
Huge shout out to McKeen's Hockey and Bench Rates as we welcome you, the one and only Dominic Tiano, back to the airwaves. Dom, thank you for finally gracing us with your presence again. How have you been?
Life's back to normal after a long hiatus. We're back and raring to go. We're into silly season, a lot of things going on. So the plan for the two of us right now is to, I guess, do a weekly Saturday show, catch up on the happenings, and then probably early July we'll go to bi-weekly leading into back into September where things pick up again and we'll be back to doing it weekly. Unless something big happens, obviously we'll be in talking about it.
Yeah, and I think you've done a lot of you've heard from a lot of people of what they want in the show. So we're giving you everything that you're looking for. So
yeah, we got to mention them because in the past few months, literally received hundreds of emails, and it really started to pick up again about a month ago when I wrote 2 articles about the Bruins developing players or prospects and how lacking it's been, and then everybody was talking about it, and it really picked up. Then I was getting, Dom, please come back, and so here we are.
And we've got a lot to go over, but we're gonna keep questions to just questions. If people want to have their conversations in the chat, they're more than welcome to do that. But we wanted to make this a nice little short show that you can enjoy on your Saturday mornings as things are getting going for you. And as we always say, we're going to give you nothing but the facts. So the first thing that I think people want to hear about, kind of dating back to when you started getting flooded with those emails, talking about kind of the Bruins development system. Obviously, the front office has taken some hits this summer with the losses of Jamie Langenbrunner and Jay Leach. Jay Leach just accepting the Hartford Wolfpack head coaching gig yesterday, so he's back in the news on that. I know you had mentioned Jay McKee as a great replacement for Leach, but now he's signed with the new Hamilton Hammers of the AHL, which is Bridgeport Islanders. Their team is moving. And obviously things changed on our back end when Jay Leach took over for John Gruden as he went to head coach the Toronto Marlies. So there's been a major domino effect, and I think that's a good place to start. Where do you see and how do you see that all affecting this Bruins team as they head into the upcoming season?
Well, this could turn into a lengthy discussion.
That explanation got 3 times longer than I meant for it.
Yeah, but facts are facts, and the thing is, we have a graph if you can put it up.
Absolutely,
Chris, for people to see. So if you go back to the 22-23 season, that's when Gruden was there. You see how well the defense as a group did. 23-24 was replaced by John McClain, who, by the way, wasn't behind the bench. He was the eye in the sky, but he was responsible for the defenseman. And then we see last year where Jay Leach came in and it fell apart. Um, I was
Now,
in favor of moving moving away from Jay Leach after last season. Um, this season wasn't much better. We heard Marco Sturm on several occasions talk about how the defense had to be better. But to me, Chris, there was one key moment in the season when I began to realize that they were going to move on from Jay Leach. And I would pop in the comments on your What's Brewing podcast with Gail. And
yep.
I kept putting in the comments section there, fire Leach, fire Leach, fire Leach. So, like I said, there was one key moment where it really, really hit me that they were about to move on from Leach. Any idea when that was?
Didn't Marco Sturm take over coaching the defense at one point?
No. What they did, it was at uh, after the Olympics when they came back from for the mini training camp, where Marco Sturm said that they were going to tweak the penalty kill, which they did, and it got a little bit better. But what most people don't realize is they think that Chris Kelly ran the PK for the Bruins. No, it was Jay Leach. Jay Leach ran the penalty kill for the Bruins. And when they took that away from him, it was pretty obvious, especially after the comments all throughout the season where Sturm would say the defense had to be better. To me, that was the moment when I realized that they're going to move on from Jay Leach.
Yeah, I think the Leach experiment didn't really work on defense. Um, and I couldn't remember how they made the adjustment, but I do remember that there was that adjustment being made. I am getting
Yeah.
a small echo in the background every once in a while. I don't know if you have a different speaker on real quick, but just something to think about. Every once in a while, I hear myself in the background.
Okay. I'll work on
But
that.
not major.
The you know people say to me, "Well, Dom, how do you explain Charlie McAvoy having a um, a career year?" Well, Charlie McAvoy is in his prime, and look at what he went and did in the Olympics.
I was gonna say, can any of that
He
just be
was
the fact
much
that he's a
better.
damn good defenseman?
Well, no, but even he improved away from the system. I mean, I look at the defense as a whole. The kind of penalties that they took, always being a step behind the play or right out of the play. That all comes back to coaching.
Yeah,
Mason Lawry 3 years ago, we were, especially after that breakout playoff against the Maple Leafs, we were all saying he finally arrived. He's finally arrived. Mason Lawry is here. Enter Jay Leach, and he fell off a cliff. Uh,
yeah,
and people say, how do you explain Jonathan Aspero? Okay, Jonathan Aspero wasn't even the first call up for the Bruins. It was Michael Callahan who couldn't cut it. Uh, Aspero came in, career AHL player to that point. Knew he had that the only way he was going to stick in the NHL was to work his ass off every given night. If Jonathan Aspero didn't have the compete level, he wouldn't be in the NHL. Now, that said, Jonathan Aspero is nothing magical. He is what he is. He's not a top pairing defenseman. If he's anywhere above a number 6 or number 7 defenseman, your defense is in trouble. Um, I don't credit that to Jay Leach. I credit that to Aspero at what, 26 years of
yep.
age. Uh, knowing what he had to do to stick to the NHL and did
Yeah,
it. But he wasn't
no,
perfect.
he came
He
in
made his
He
mistakes.
came in and he knew he had to complement someone else on the defense and let them play their game. I mean, he was on a top pairing with Charlie McAvoy for most of the season and only got 13 points. If that was any other defenseman, like people, fans would be sitting there going, "What the hell is he doing in our top pairing?" He complimented McAvoy. He let McAvoy play his game. It is what helped McAvoy have the career year because he was able to focus on himself. He didn't have to worry about bringing someone else along and making sure someone else didn't screw up defensively and making sure that he was out of position to be in position for something else to happen. He just let McAvoy play. And by doing so, he was able to stick in the NHL for 61 games.
Absolutely. I'm glad they made the difference or the change. The difference for me will be to see what they do going forward. I want some out of the box thinking, much like they did when they brought John Gruden in as an assistant coach. Jay McKee would have been perfect for this defense, just like Gruden was. Cut from the same cloth, both coached in the Ontario Hockey League, both coached the Brantford Bulldogs. Um, you know, um, Jay McKee is so good with young players. Just to give an example, Caleb Malhotra, who will be the top center drafted in this year's draft, came over from the BCHL, was not very good, had a terrible year, and McKee coached him up to where he is now. That he's going to be the top center drafted in the upcoming draft. So, um, 4 or 5 days after I put his name out there, the Islanders signed him. Uh, as you said, to coach their AHL affiliate. I don't want any retreads. I want an outside the box person, just like Gruden was, just like McKee would have been. Uh, you know,
Yeah,
when you think about it, Marco Sturm is this, like, he's long removed from being a Bruins player, um, long removed from the organization. That's what I want to see them do.
now, I was going to say, is there anyone in particular that you're seeing? Because we're seeing a lot of turnover in some coaching staffs. There's been some turnover in places like Vancouver, and Edmonton's coaching staff is getting turned over again. And are there any other assistant coaches out there that you look at and say that this is someone they should target? Or, I mean, I want to see Sturm make this hire. I want to see what direction he goes in. I know Steve Spott was a highly recommended coach out of Dallas, and that was something that a lot of people were looking at. I really liked the fact that that was a guy Sturm wanted, and he was able to make that hire. I want to see him be able to do it again.
Uh, I want to see somebody with no prior NHL coaching experience.
Okay.
That that's that's what they did with Gruden. Brought him in. He was great. He was great with the defensemen. He was great with the young players. Um, McKee was at the top of my list. He was number one, bar none. What I do want to see, and I've talked about this before, and I doubt any NHL team is going to do it anytime soon. But I want to see a coach coach the forwards, a coach coaching the defense, and a coach for special teams. And special teams is PPPK, 6-on-5, 5-on-6. One coach be responsible for all those, and I think Steve Spock can do it. Um, that way, you're not taking Chris Kelly or whoever takes over for the defense, taking them away from what they really are responsible for. Give it all to Spot. Let him handle the special teams. Um, I've talked about it for quite some time now. A special teams coach, but I doubt they'll go that route.
Yeah, I don't see many teams going that route. It just, it's one of those. This is how we've always done it. Things that I kind of have thoughts on that. Some team's going to change it one day and it's going to work and people are going to love it. But I mean, yeah, not having any NHL coaching experience. I mean, the AHL's flooded with a bunch of really good coaches. I know that Steve Ott, for instance, was able to use the Thunderbirds to shut down the Providence Bruins a lot this season. So there are good coaching candidates out there for that type of role. What do you
Yeah.
think the loss though of Jamie Langenbrunner in the front office simulate or not simulates, but what change do you think that stimulates in the front office, and what does it reflect? Because we've had several conversations about the lack of player development for some of the top guys that they've taken, and fans complain and moan about players that haven't been developed and how they draft and all that. How do you see Langenbrunner's departure changing things within the organization?
Well, this is a tough one to explain. First of all, yeah, he's assistant general manager, but he was also the director of player personnel, and people don't really know what the director of player personnel is responsible for. So we have a graph here. So at the top we have Don Sweeney. Obviously, Cam Neely is above him, but I don't know that Neely really puts himself into any of these things. So um, we also have Evan Gold in there, but his responsibilities are totally different than what Langenbrunner um, has done.
Someone else
So
the Bruins almost lost this offseason too, Evan Gold. I'm glad
yeah,
you mentioned him.
yeah. So you have Adam McQuaid as director of player development and all the people that fall under him. Um, you have Dennis Bomby as director of pro scouting and all the people under him. You have Ryan Nadeau as director of amateur scouting and all the people that fall under him. And of course, you have the analytics department. Can I say something about analytics
Absolutely. Do you want
real
me to pull
quick
the graph
if we have
down?
the time? Yeah, we'll bring it back up in a minute. So, for years, I know analytics has become really, really big amongst fans as more information becomes available. Um, but for years, I've been saying now, look, there's analytics that teams keep that we have no idea about. And one of the newest ones, and some teams I know for a fact has implemented this, is Hockey IQ. There is now an analytic for Hockey IQ. There's sources out there like Blade Tech that have found out that you can actually teach Hockey IQ, and they found a way to monitor it and provide an analytics on it.
Hmm.
Um, One of the biggest studies was done by McGill University from January 1st last year to December 31st. So a whole year involving an off season. They have their own model of teaching hockey IQ and tracking it. And they took a group of 50 14-year-old kids, taught them using their method and tracked it. And they found a marked improvement from January 1 to December 31st.
Wow.
It was the study was so promising. It actually got published earlier this year in the Sports Journal or Sports Sciences Journal. The problem with their study is, and they admit this, is it will take a couple of years to find out if it translates going from one level to the next level to the next level and all the way up to the NHL. So um, I just had to mention that because analytics is much deeper than the information that we have.
Yeah, that's not a statistic that I
So
can see teams putting out there publicly as far as the way they're measuring it.
no, no, but it's if people have a chance to read up on it, it's very, very intriguing the way they teach it. It's not just on ice; it's off ice cognitive stuff that they do. A lot of film. They'll show a 3 second. They'll take a 3 second clip of a film and say, "Okay, what's your next play from here?"
Oh, wow.
And um, they'll go on from there and say, no, this is the right play. And they'll show a couple of examples where they made the wrong play and what happened, when they made the right play and what happened. So I'm very curious to see how far this goes.
Yeah,
So,
that's definitely going to be very interesting to keep an eye on.
yeah.
It's only going to make the players
So
smarter if they can find a way to improve
yeah,
that. So,
exactly. So if we go back to that chart, all those people that we mentioned all reported to Jamie Langenbrunner. And it was Langenbrunner's responsibility to put all that information together on every single player and provide Don Sweeney with the ammunition he needed for drafting, player development, trades, so on and so forth. Langenbrunner came in to the position with absolutely no experience. He was director of player development before that, but no managerial experience. I think the last experienced person that the Bruins did bring in was John Ferguson Jr., who was, prior to taking the Boston job, general manager of the Toronto Maple Leafs. So where they go from here, I don't know, but I would like to see an experienced person come in rather than somebody doing on-the-job training like Langenbrunner had to do.
yeah, I mean, I think we can all agree that it's all based on the information that he was given. He correlated a lot of it. I mean, Dennis Bonvie has done a great job of pro scouting. We've seen that help improve this team time and time again. He and his team huge on the acquisitions of guys like Fraser Minton, and well, Minton might have fallen more under Ryan Nadeau because he would have still. Well, I don't know. You tell me, Dom. Who would have fallen?
No, it's very. It probably would have fallen under all of them because they would have had a book on him from junior. Let's not forget the Bruins said they had interest in drafting him. He just wasn't available to them.
Yeah, so that means Ryan Nadeau and his staff would have had a solid book on him, and then Bonvie and his crew would have been able to kind of add to that as he was in the AHL and moving up. So,
right, exactly, and they would have reported to Langenbrunner, and Langenbrunner would have. It was his responsibility to put it all together, and
is there anything that you wanted to add on Brett Harkins? Oops, sorry, couldn't see you. So, was there anything that you wanted to add on Harkins or Axelson? I know those guys were also mentioned on the chart. Do you see them potentially moving up in a role? Do you see elevation in this organization at all, or do you think most of them are going to stay where they are and they're just going to try and find that piece to replace Langenbrunner?
Well, the general feeling is, or the general promotion would have Adam McQuaid taking over that role, much like Langenbrunner did from JFK. But again, what experience does Adam McQuaid have? Yeah, he's been in player development. That's it.
Yeah, I think they need someone who can do that job well. We'll have to see where they go with it ultimately. Would you be okay with Adam McQuaid getting that promotion?
No, I wouldn't. He's inexperienced. He's basically looked after player development. What does he know about the pro game? Um, he's busy enough with following prospects all over North America that are under Bruce's control. What experience or knowledge does he have of pro players?
I mean, I think he's doing a great job where he's at with what he's been given. Overall, I mean, I don't see him changing roles. I think he's in a decent role for himself. And I know we keep hearing things like, fans want Bergeron back, they want Chara back. I just don't see either of them being those types of front office
No,
guys.
it's funny that you mentioned Bergeron because I was asked, because I was having this discussion a little bit on Twitter last night, and somebody said, "Why not bring Bergeron back in for this role?" Well, one, he's inexperienced, so I'm not sure that he's the right guy for player personnel. Two, Patrice Bergeron, and most people don't know this, is affiliated with Penzi Films. They're the ones that did the Zdeno Chara um, tribute video after when he was getting his number or when he was getting into the Hall of Fame. They've done work for the NHL. They've done all sorts of other work outside of hockey. And Patrice Bergeron is very content and happy in doing that work, and I think that's where his heart is at right now. So it's not as easy as saying, "Well, bring this guy in." They've got to want the job.
Yeah, I think a lot of people seem to forget that. Also, he does still show up around the rink. He does. I mean, he worked with the centers in faceoffs, and he does still come to practice occasionally. But he can do it on his own terms. And I think right now that's how you
Yeah,
want him to do it because that's what's going to make him want to come back in the future and do something full time when he's stepping away from the game right now as much as he wants. And I think if anybody's earned it, a player like Patrice Bergeron has earned that right, and he'll always be welcome in those facilities. So he can come in whenever he wants.
yeah, and the amount of travel that Langenbrunner had to do, I mean, you can't underestimate the amount of travel he had to do in his role. So I don't think Bergeron wants that. He doesn't want to be away from his family for days at a time again. He did that for 20 years. So
I do want to give a quick shout out. We got Court Lalonde of Bruins Diehards jumping in the comments, and he's just bolstering everything they need. Experience first, not just former Bruins. Thanks and huge shout out to Court. I know you've been on his show a few times while you've taken your time off. Tyler does ask though, do you know if the Bruins would have had interest in Brackett before he went to the Leafs?
I don't know. Um, I don't know what you know. Nadeau gets a bad rap because let's face it, the Bruins drafting for quite a while was not very good. Look, I spent 2 days down at the combine in Buffalo this week. I wish I was there today because um, a lot of the testing, some of the top players is going on this morning. Um, but I can tell you, they're very involved. I watch them uh, talking, communicating, you know, mingling with the kids, mingling with management from other teams. So I'm fine with the job he's done. Um, especially the last couple of years, I don't think we can question the Bruins drafting now. Of course, these guys have to pan out, but only time will tell. But the last couple of years, I've been pretty impressed with their
Now, I'm
drafting.
glad you
So
mentioned the draft. Things did not fall our way at the ping pong draft or the
no,
lottery there. So we only have the 23rd overall selection. I know you've recently put out some information on some players that you would be interested to see them draft at that 23rd overall spot. I want to touch on a couple of them briefly. And then I do want to get into your thoughts. We'll touch on it at the end, some of the trade talk that's going on. And obviously that 23rd overall pick might come up in some of that. So first, I want to start with Nikita Klepov. He's someone that you jumped into our What's Brewing comments. And yes, Court, we can question their developing as part of this conversation. What can you tell us about Klepov, and what do you like about his game? How do you see him fitting in for this team, as some of those questions do exist about the players and how they're developed, especially, and I know Court brought this up a few times in his videos, with Ryan Mujanel and Providence as their head coach, and Providence being a great AHL organization, but not elevating guys to the NHL.
Well, wow, I could go on an hour just about this. So,
put that in a pin for next week.
I love Klepov as a player. Being from the Ontario Hockey League, I know him very well. I've had the chance to talk to him a couple of times. Here's the thing about the 23rd overall pick. If I combine 4 players that could possibly be there, and I have to point out on June the 20th we'll have a guest from McKean's Hockey joining us, which will be an all draft show on possibilities the Bruins will have. So if I look at 4 players in and around where the Bruins are going to pick at 23, I think the best players available are all forwards. And we know they need defensemen, but they also need skilled forwards, which to me means that the only way they're going to fix the defense in the immediate future is via trade or free agency, and we know it's not there in free agency. When I went on my rant about the Bruins' development, it was because of a comment that one NHL scout, wasn't a Bruins scout, he was actually from a Western Conference NHL team. Because in all the players that I've covered in my write-ups, I've actually spoken to skating coaches and NHL scouts. And one scout, when I talked to him about Klepov, said to me, why would the Bruins draft him after what happened with Fabian Lysell, or the experience with Fabian? I don't remember the exact words. It's in the column that I wrote about it. And, I thought about it for 2 days, and then I went on my rant about Bruins development. Because if someone outside the organization with a different organization sees an issue, then we have to see an issue. And that's when I went on my rant. For a couple of weeks, every single podcast out there was then talking about it. Here's my thing, especially with the announcement coming out of the NCAA eligibility yesterday. Within a year or two, Providence is not going to be Boston's main development program. It is going to be the NCAA. I truly believe that. The AHL will become a 1-year stopgap to get them accustomed to the NHL game. But I think that the natural development is now going to happen in the NCAA. With that, we all thought that the CHL and the USHL were going to suffer. They've actually gotten stronger.
Yeah, I think the unintended consequences are going to affect the American Hockey League and the ECHL a lot more.
Yeah, because the CHL and the USHL and the NHL worked with the NCAA on what is best for hockey. Um, we're in the next couple of years, we're going to see major CHL expansion. We're going to see USHL expansion. That's not.
Didn't they already announce
It
4 new
didn't.
USHL teams in the West Coast?
Yeah, they did, but we're gonna see more. That's what the NCAA did not hurt those leagues. It actually benefited them. Um, what we're seeing is more Europeans now coming over and getting accustomed to the North American game because of it. So um, whether it's Ryan Muginel, Adam McQuaid will still be involved even at the NCAA level, talking to players. But it's not going to be Bruins coaching that's going to be developing these players. It's going to be done in the NCAA, and like I said, the AHL is just going to be a stopgap to getting players ready for the pro game, not necessarily developing.
For some players are just going to skip it altogether and go right from their NCAA to the
Exactly,
pro.
but the vast majority.
Yeah, I mean, with that new role for a team like Providence, do you think Bruins have the right guy? I mean, you take a guy like Klepov, who, like you said, after everything that's happened with Fabian Lysell, it's all happened in Providence. So, do you think
Hmm.
the Bruins need to reset how they staff and run the P Bruins?
If 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 they hold the pick and are at 23 and Nikita Klepov is there with a couple of other players, if they're there, um, and they pass on them, um, then all this talk about needing to add skill and speed has just been for show. They're not serious about it. That's my opinion.
Good question here from Court. Do you think teams will start to draft players based on the system they play in, or have the players move to teams in the NCAA which they like that their system?
Um, let No, I don't think you can draft based on the system that they're playing. Um, if I had to pick a team that plays the closest to what Marco Stern wants to do at a junior, I would say it's the London Knights. um,
But the London Knights pump out NHL talent all the time,
right,
regardless of how
right,
I mean, the coach isn't changing anytime soon, but regardless of what NHL team they end up on.
yeah. You if if they truly believe in not taking the safe pick like John Beecher or Trent Frederick and going for the home run or going for the swing like Fabian Lysell, um, take your pick of the three. None of them have really succeeded. Trent Frederick maybe for a little bit. So would you not rather not take that shot with Fabian Lysell and miss than to draft a John Beecher? And
I mean, I'd say John Beecher's a quote unquote hit from the draft, but it's not, you're not even talking about a strong single if you're talking about a hit, let alone a home run. At least with Fabian Lysell, you tried to hit, a deep fly ball and it didn't work.
right, so you know, I'd be very upset if they passed on Klepov or a couple of other people to take the safer pick at 23. Um, but back to the other part of Court's question, can you put it up again? Because there was a
Yeah. The players
so
get moved to teams in the NCAA that play the system that the pro team likes.
um, let me use Vashik Blanar as an example here. So, he was drafted in the USHL draft by Youngstown, I believe, um, which does a good job at developing players. People think that he's going there for next season, and then is it UMass the year after?
Yeah, I know he's going to be
Um,
going to UMass, but he's committed like 2 years in advance, if I'm not mistaken.
yeah, after next season. People thought it was next season, but I spoke to his agent or his representative, and no, 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 he's not there till 27, 28. Um, then there were reports that he's going to the USHL this year, so I reached out to his player representative again last week or 2 weeks ago. No, 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 that's not true. He's under contract um, in the Swedish Hockey League. I forget what team it's for. Um, until December 15th. He has a contract for a couple of months. His goal is to get into Swedish Hockey League games this season and focus on the World Junior Championships in December. And they'll decide after that what their next play is. He has offers from Canadian Hockey League teams, more than one, and he has an offer to go play with Youngstown in the USHL following that. The Bruins will get involved in that. They like the fact that he's going to UMass. Let him develop there instead of Providence because it'll be far better for him, especially the way things are going with player development down in Providence, in my opinion. Um, I'm not American, but I'll use my, what is it, Second Amendment rights? No, First Amendment rights um, uh, to speak my opinion. Um, uh, but I'm sure that the Bruins will have a voice on what they want him to do following the World Junior Championships. And uh, it's not cut and dry on whether it's going to be the USHL. Let's not forget the Bruins wanted Fabian Lysell in Vancouver and the CHL. Uh, a lot of the reasons is because his name skips me right now. He's the special advisor to Don Sweeney. Lives in Vancouver and could keep an eye on him in Vancouver. Um, so
Scott
they
Bradley?
have several. Yeah, Scott Bradley. So the Bruins will have a lot of reasons as to why they want him to go somewhere. It's no guarantee that Blanar is going to accept their recommendation, but um,
I mean,
that's the way it goes.
I think a bigger question is if he was able to go to Vancouver and Scott Bradley was there, would we have a different Fabian Lysell right now?
I don't know.
That's the big what if, and that's one of the things that player development has to look at and figure out because the path that they took clearly hasn't worked yet for Lysell. I think you and I are still in agreement that there's no need to give up on. He's what, 23 right now, Lysell?
He's still 22, I
22,
believe.
23. There's no need to give up on him just yet, but you let him play out his string until he becomes an unrestricted free agent, in my opinion. And if he still hasn't figured it out by then, you've given him all the chances that he can have.
No, but you make a good point, though, Chris. Like the option for Lysell to go to college wasn't there. Um, would it have been different if he had, based on how the Bruins have developed players? Loke Johansson um, really hasn't seen the ice. He got into half the games, less than half the games in the ECHL with Maine this year. How different would it have been for him um, if the NCAA was an option. um, Jackson Edward, who the Bruins gave up on, barely got to see the ice in the American Hockey League with Providence. Gets traded and breaks out. As soon as he gets out of the system, he breaks out. Would it have been better for him to go to the NCAA? Uh, the option wasn't there for him, and that hurts. That really, really hurts.
Yeah, and it's Don Sweeney who said we don't want to keep seeing our talent sprinkled around the league? Was that his comment, or was that Neely's comment?
Yeah,
So like that's another way that it's going to get sprinkled around the league is by losing these guys if you can't develop them in your own system. And I think Loke Johansson's a great example because the guy played 49 games between Providence and Maine. Most of them were with Maine. If he was going to be in Maine, why'd you sign him to a pro contract? Now you're going to get to the end of his ELC and he's going to be an ECHL player because that's where you've been putting him. He should have been on the Providence roster at a minimum because you gave him that NHL contract. But he's 20 years old? So he got beat out by guys like Billy Sweezy and, 30, like I think that's the biggest issue that we're seeing with Providence. But if NCAA becomes more of an option, then that's where you can see some of these guys get put.
Look, Court Lalonde did a great show on his YouTube channel, and I urge people to go check out Bruins Diehards. He did a video on the based on the articles that I wrote, and he broke down the Bruins development and who's been responsible for them, and they really have not had any major development since Bruce Cassidy coached the Providence Bruins. He was by far the coach most responsible for sending players to the NHL. Jay Leach was at the bottom, or maybe it was Mouginel at the bottom. Jay Leach wasn't far behind him. I urge you to check out Court's video. Put it simply, it sucks, man. It just sucks that we're getting nothing out of it.
Yeah. And I know we're just over the 45-minute mark, which is where we want to try to keep these short episodes to. But we touched on it a little bit, and I didn't know if you wanted to take 5 minutes or so. There's a lot of big names out there that other teams have developed that people would love to see in a Bruins uniform. Most notably yesterday, the news dropped that Dylan Larkin has asked for a trade. So I think 5,000 people have probably put him on the Bruins in 250,000 different ways. And then obviously other names like Elias Pettersson, Simon Nemec, Robert Thomas's name was thrown out there at the trade deadline. Another one.
He's now off.
Yeah,
he's now
off. Mason McTavish's name keeps coming up. I see Jason Robertson's name come up. The one that bothers me the most, though, is probably Filip Hronek because his agent have said that he doesn't want to go anywhere. The team doesn't want him to go anywhere. Bruins fans need to stop getting Filip Hronek in their mind because he doesn't want to leave Vancouver. But some of these other names, are there any that you think they should realistically target based off of what – because we were talking about this before the show. One of the things that people don't seem to realize is you have to not only match what someone else puts on the table, but you have to be able to beat it.
Especially when you're talking Dylan Larkin because he's within the division. So it's not just matching somebody else's offer. It's beating it because for Steve Yzerman to deal him within the division, you have to beat the best offer he gets and beat it significantly. Here's my issue with Larkin. Last year, the Bruins had a plan. Now, it's to compete, yes, not necessarily be a Stanley Cup contender. You're building towards that a couple of years down the road. For what it's going to require to get Dylan Larkin, the assets, they're are they straying from what they set out to do a year ago? In my opinion, the answer is yes. Will he help? Um, sure, he'll help. But do you want 4 years of Dylan Larkin, or do you want 14 years of James Higgins, as an example?
That's the one I've seen so many people say, "Oh, Pavel Zacha and a first." Like that's not going to be nearly enough to get it done.
No,
And they're not going to want futures for him. They're going to want guys that can help right now, young guys who can help right now. If it's not James Higgins, it's Fraser Minton.
Right. And again, do you want 4 years of Dylan Larkin, or do you want 14 years of Fraser Minton or Dean Letourneau? Sure, those guys could miss, but I'd rather gamble that they're going to hit than a 4-year investment for Dylan Larkin as that you're putting him in for the next 4 years as a chance to win now when you haven't got the team to win now. Yeah, you have to start somewhere and start acquiring different pieces at different times. It's like I mentioned with the draft, it's the best players available to them at 23, in my opinion, are forwards. So you should be focusing on getting that young defenseman that will, whether it's a Zellweger in Anaheim or a Nemec in New Jersey or somebody along that ilk, somebody in that age group to start building the defense, because you're not getting them in the draft this year.
No, I actually put out a piece on a few different right shot defensemen that I think are a little bit more realistic in targets because they're not going to cost an arm and a leg. Now, I think for a player like, some of those that we mentioned, if it was only going to cost you, a James Higgins and a pick, that's when you can start to consider, because you're not emptying your cabinets. But when when you have to factor in, it's going to cost you Higgins, Zellers, an NHL player, and a first round pick. Like it's just not worth it at that point. When you have 7 or 8 things in your cabinet and you have to deal 4 or 5 of them to get the player, you need to have more ammunition.
Yeah, it makes everything that they did last year irrelevant. So I'm sure Sweeney will have the discussions.
You still make the
personally
phone call.
would rather, yeah, you still make the phone call to see where it's at, and first of all, to see if Larkin would even have any interest in coming to Boston, because he controls where he goes.
Yeah, 100%. He has the full no move for the next 2 years, but that also means that he doesn't have to be traded right away. If Yzerman's proven before, I think it was Jonathan Drouin when he was in Tampa, demanded a trade, and he waited, like 8 months to move him?
Yeah.
And it worked out for him. Tampa's got Mikhail Sergachev because of that move. So Yzerman will make it clear, I'll work with you, but you got to work with me, and they're not going to rush to move him.
Yeah, Yzerman's not going to give him away. So he's not.
But I'm with you. You got to save what you have here. Anything else that you want to touch on in our first episode back?
No, I think we got it covered for now. Next week we'll talk a little bit more about the forward group, where they should probably go from there. We didn't get to that today, but we want to keep these episodes short because in the communication that you guys, the listeners, have given to me is that you feel these podcasts go on too long, so you wanted them short. And what I will ask you, I'm not going to ask you guys to subscribe. That's not my style. But to get the show back where it was before we had to take our hiatus, if you're on YouTube, if you could please give us a like, that'll help out. If you want to subscribe, that's up to you. I'm not going to ask you to do that.
Yeah, and real quick, we talk as soon as we talk trading Higgins. As soon as we talk about Larkin, we get a couple of things in the comments. You have to trade for Larkin, even if it costs Higgins plus, because he's a center in his prime. If he's traded to a competitor of the Bruins, how far out will that push the Bruins Stanley Cup prospects? To which I would say, if you're worried about Larkin going to a team, then you're not focused enough on your own team. You focus on what your team is. You don't worry about the moves other teams make. If a player becomes available, then you can look at it and go, this is how it could affect our team if we acquire him. If we don't, what is our plan? And if we do, what's it going to cost us, and how does it deviate from our current plan? And then as far as moving Higgins plus to get him, if it's Higgins plus, fine. If it's Higgins plus, that's when you lose me.
Yeah, and I'll come back on that with one other thing is Larkin is about to come out of his prime. Mm-hmm. Prime is 26 to 29. And I will quote a very famous GM who once said to me, Dom, I never like acquiring players that come from a losing atmosphere. In 11 seasons, Dylan Larkin's teams have made the playoffs once.
And that was his rookie season.
Yeah.
So,
or was it his rookie season or second?
One of his first two seasons. I want to say it was like 18 or 19 when it happened. He was a teenager when it happened, and he's far from that now. He's almost 30. So
I'm not saying don't acquire him. I'm saying if you acquire him, it better be for the right price, and it better be for that you stick to the plan that you started a year ago. If you stray from that plan, what's the sense in coming up with a plan to begin with?
Right. And that's where I think you look at staying pat. Just because a player's available doesn't mean you have to trade for him. I think that's lost on people. Plus, all 31 other teams are allowed to try to trade for him too. So, with that, I give you the final thought, unless that qualifies as your final thought.
Oh, that qualifies my final thought.
All right. Until next week, go Bees.
Go Bees.
Welcome to the Dom.Hockey Podcast, proudly presented by Bench Rates. Created by a former hockey player, Bench Rates uses a proprietary algorithm to assign a true monetary value to a player's on-ice contributions and lets you compare that value directly to his cap hit. Bench Rates evaluates professional players across leagues worldwide, including the NHL and AHL. Learn more at benchrates.com. Also brought to you by McKeen's Hockey. McKeen's produces the premier NHL draft guide featuring more than 200 player reports and comprehensive rankings. They also deliver in-depth prospect coverage through their annual team-by-team rankings and their trusted hockey pool yearbook. Visit mckeens.com and subscribe for just $16.50 Canadian for 3 months.